Welcome to Campaigns and Coffee. Grab your mug and let's dive into tales of adventure and the answers to your quirkiest questions. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fallout TV show and our recent Fallout intro game. So, what did you guys think of the Fallout TV show and our intro game?
Well, I guess the TV show was good enough that it made us want to play Fallout. So
Yep, for sure,
it's good. I think it's people have said that it feels like, Fallout 5, like the next game in the series, sort of, but as in television format. So I think it feels like it's loyal to the series, and it feels there's a spectrum of violence and gore in Fallout, and having recently gone back to Fallout 4, there's head exploding like all the time whenever you're shooting anything. That's like just chunks of stuff everywhere. And then there's like the Fallout TV series, which still has some of the gore, but it's usually like it's maybe a little bit for like a surprise or shock value. Like it's definitely still there, but it's not like every time someone fires a gun, somebody's arm goes flying off. And then there's whatever we're doing in the RPG. So the TV show is kind of in that happy middle. There's still some scenes where you might be like, ooh, I don't want to see what's going on with that guy's foot. No, I'm just going to go to the other room for a minute or look away. Yep. Spoilers, but
they tried to make it. I think they tried to make it kind of cartoony, but it didn't quite make that. In some spots, it's not like, was it Invincible? The Amazon.
Oh, right. Cartoon. Yeah.
That is just like gratuitously violent and a cartoon. And like I couldn't even get through the first episode. It was like, this is just, the story might be great, but the gratuitous violence is not necessary for me. And, and I'm fine with things like, RoboCop and other stuff like that. And stuff exploding. It just seemed extra. Whereas the Fallout stuff got toward the extra, but was also played a little bit more toward the comedy aspect of things, like the replacement leg, the battlefield legs that looks like a Protectron leg that gets put on the guy, and it's like, oh, that's not going to work.
What did you think, Josh?
So I haven't gotten too far into the series. I've only seen the first episodes. So it's very limited on the actual series. But so far, I have enjoyed it. I mean, like you said, it kind of stays true to it in a little bit. I didn't go into it expecting that they were going to start blowing limbs off and everything like that.
So. Honestly, I had forgotten just how violent Fallout 4 was until I went back in and started playing it again, because it's been a long time, and I think my kids were very little when I was actually playing it the first time around, because I was like, I don't know, 10 years ago. It's not the sort of game you want to be playing when your 3-year-old wanders in, right? And so I think I usually played it up here in the game room, right, where I could safely sow carnage across the wasteland. Yeah, so I mean, it was a bit of a shock when I went back in. I don't know if I didn't change any settings for the gore, so I think this is just like out of the box gore.
Out of the box, people tend to like explode into chunks. But it's not super realistic chunks all the time. So it's definitely there are games like some horror games and other things like that are definitely more graphic. But you can, since Fallout 1, take the perk Bloody Mess, in which things generally tend to explode into a bloody mess, which I think was inspired by the old video game Wasteland, which came before it. I played that on the Apple II, and there was a time when you would crit, it would say it explodes like a blood sausage. Was the text description of that. I like the show. I've gone through it all once. I'll probably watch it again at some point. It's not as rewatchable as Edge Runners is for me, but it's definitely something that I would rewatch again for more of the lore stuff. I've got some thoughts about season 2 and like where certain characters are, which I can't say because Josh is only on episode 1.
It's okay. So the downside to it is since the wife is working so much, I have a constant 4-year-old around me. So watching Fallout is going to take me a while.
Don't watch Fallout in front of the 4-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, Fallout falls into that category of things that I watch after everybody else goes to bed.
Yep.
Because, like, I mean, my son would probably watch it with me, but he wasn't a big Fallout guy. And my wife is not going to watch Fallout. But I will say, story-wise, we're talking a lot about the gore. I think the story is very true to your standard Fallout series. Like, the setup is pretty much the same. Like, episode 1, we learn, like, prehistory before the bombs fall. We meet Lucy is the main character, who's a vault dweller. There's something a bit off about the vault. I think we know that from day 1. There's usually something off about every vault.
But even if you've never played a Fallout game before, you can sense that there's something off about the vault.
Yes. I would say so. It feels very true to the series, but not overly so. Sometimes things can be so loyal that it doesn't feel like there's any freedom to actually innovate. But like, we've got the Brotherhood of Steel. They're there. Feels like very Brotherhood of Steel-y. They're like, you know, the technological crusader types who are, you know, walking around in the power armor. The power armor looks awesome.
The power armor does look really good.
But the story is good, and I think the story actually carries things forward. And I think the story ultimately, it wasn't, you know, dramatic gore that made me want to play the role-playing game. It was the story that's like, ooh, like, and then David brings up, let's play Fallout. I'm like, okay, let's play Fallout. So
yeah,
segue to Fallout.
So segue to Fallout. That was one of my other questions. Was how do you feel that the role-playing game as written, but also the game we played, like, how does that feel Fallout wise? So I guess there's two questions in that one question. Like, does it evoke the feeling of the video game and or the TV series?
Why don't you go first, Josh?
So, speaking from, I guess, mostly the video game experience, yeah. Picking out the stats with special and picking out the perks and everything. Because I mean, most of the time that I've spent on the game so far has been character creation. So, yeah, I like. It does feel pretty true to the actual video game. And then, like you guys were saying, they've got the Brotherhood of Steel and everything like that, which is what my anti character is.
Yeah. Your character who's not necessarily like super Brotherhood of Steel, like military. He's definitely not in that fashion. But he's really, really lucky, so he fits in really well there.
I wanted a character that you're like, how did this guy make it into the Brotherhood of Steel?
Yeah, he's like the Coast Guard auxiliary.
Yeah, I see your character coming in more as ending up like as a scribe or perpetually sent out into the wasteland to find things because he's really lucky at finding things. And just for those out there, Josh put 10 in his luck stat. So his luck is like off the charts compared to everybody else. And
no strength, no endurance,
everything else is really low.
I would say reading through the rules,
think you should eventually.
Sorry, go ahead.
I do think you should eventually pick up that perk of you spend a luck point and you can then use your luck stat instead of another stat when you're rolling something. Because like, if you really need to shoot and have that lucky hit, that's just a perfect thing for it.
I have been doing several different directions in the real world. So I have not made it too far through the book. Like, basically, I've just been reading the bits I needed to be able to get the character created so that we could do the one shot. So overall, I'd say, like, if it feels very Fallout-y, right? Like, you've got the I can have my iPad here, like I can show you've got your perks and it's got the appropriate little Fallout guy pictures to illustrate things. The perks actually kind of track pretty closely to the perks that we see in the video game. So there's that echo. And do you get one at every level? I haven't leveled up my character yet.
You get one at every level. So, and one of those can be to increase a stat. So it's basically just like Fallout 4 in that sense.
Gotcha.
I was actually showing Josh before we started recording. I had an impulse buy of the Fallout perk cards actual deck, which is really big. But it's kind of nice to be able to just like these are these are the first 3 perks that Josh chose, which was better criticals, bloody mess, and then Grim Reaper sprint. So all of the perks that are in Fallout 4, I believe, are the exact same perks in the role-playing game, but they are the rules for them mostly match what's in Fallout 4, but are tailored obviously toward the role-playing game mechanics.
Right.
So
I liked that, like, so just reading through the intro section, it was pretty easy to make a character. You have all the base options right out of the box. Like, I think there's none of this, like, have to go and buy, like, a bunch of different extra rules to get to kind of the core Fallout experience. So you can play, Super Mutant, you can play a Vault Dweller, Scavenger, like, whatever. Yeah, Mr. Handy, and actually several variations on Mr. Handy, which Aaron is playing a Nurse Handy, which is
Nurse Handy. Yep,
hilariously
Nurse
obnoxious.
Handy, who is in charge of it instead of instead of trying to remember the name for it. It's not Nurse Handy. It's there's like a nanny bot Handy, and she's not playing that one. She's playing the nurse. But she was still in charge of young little kids. And so, is still kind of in that mode of, shepherding little kids, but has survived 200 years in the Commonwealth since the apocalypse. And so when she says it's time for your nap, she uses the laser that she has.
Right. So I ended up making a Vault Dweller, Steve New Gunner. And so it was fun making the background for it. Like, the thing that I haven't gotten, I think this is true of most role-playing games, is really understanding how the mechanics work together to understand how easy or hard a thing is going to be. Because this is a 2d20 game, so you're trying to roll under attribute plus skill score, and you need a certain number of successes. So every time you roll under, it's a success. There's a dice pool where we can add 2 action points so that we can then buy more dice. You can increase your success. So there's an economy there that I like. We got to play with that a little bit, but I think it's going to take a session or 2 to really understand how it kind of comes together. I did not max out any of my attributes, but I had this same problem with Savage Worlds the first time I played it, right? Like, with Savage Worlds, I picked my attributes, and then I took like a D4 at every skill because I want them all, but that sucks. If you do that, your character, you can't do or hit anything, and usually just fails a lot, right? Which can be fun, but it takes a little bit to understand, actually, I should have had a D8 in this or something else. So I'm still trying to understand how Fallout works in that. So far, I think it's pretty cool, and I liked the initial adventure. Kind of had our group came together, and we kind of had the waking up in the lab sort of experience, and got to fight. Was it rad roaches?
Yep.
Yeah, it was rad roaches, because I figured that would be like, when I put this together, I knew it was kind of like the latter half of our session 0. We made characters. We were going to do it all together, like over Riverside or Discord or whatever, some video, whatever. But schedules didn't line up, as is sometimes the case. And so we did all the character creation stuff kind of asynchronously over our Discord. And then so we finished that up, and then we played about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for that initial adventure. So I made it kind of short. And I wasn't sure how combat would go, like in terms of speed and things like that. So I threw rad roaches because rad roaches are kind of a common Fallout video game first villain.
Yes.
And the way I did it was I had, you first started with 1, and then more started pouring in as the combat went on. And it's kind of a neat technique for GMing of, rather than have like 30 goblins appear and you're not sure, and then they wipe out, total party, kill the party. If you have the goblins, kind of slowly trickle in, but more are coming, it kind of ratchets up the tension, but also gives you an out of, okay, we've reached the limit of either the party's abilities to take them on, or just this combat has gone on way too long and interest is waning. We can end the combat by not having more things come in. So I was trying to, it was kind of my testing of the waters GM wise of like, okay, how tough is one rad roach? I know they're going to take it out pretty quick, but how easy is it to hit? How easy is it to kill? And then I could start adding more and more in. And I think ultimately, I think there were a total of 5 that came through. And I think maybe there was a 6th one, but the 6th one was the one that jumped on Aaron's nurse Handy, and she had to step away early in the game. And so it kind of rode on her head as she ran down the hall, as she floated down the hall. So that was the end of the combat. And so there was a bit of a mystery of like, why are you guys here? How did you get here? The last thing you really remember was you all had kind of met in some sort of, I picture it as like a rad storm had happened. You all took shelter as this pack of roving feral ghouls had gone outside, and you all one by one are like climbing up into the second story of this house and are like, okay, is it more dangerous in here with all these strangers, or is it more dangerous out there in the rad storm with this pack of feral ghouls? I'm going to stay here. And then you all, and this was all decided prior to the game. So that's how they all met, was through this shared danger. And then they woke up in these weird cryogenic pod things with blood all over and smashed consoles and other stuff like that. So
I think so. The other thing was that we haven't really gotten into is location-based hits. Like I look at my character sheet right now. There's different like values for different locations, and there's a random hit table and stuff, but we didn't really get into that.
Well, you guys never got hit.
Right, we also didn't take advantage of we didn't bring up bats and start blowing off legs off of rad roaches, right?
Right.
And then,
I mean, the nice thing about rad roaches is they do have hit points, but they kind of work like mooks in Savage Worlds. If you cause an injury to them, which means like if you score a crit, and there's multiple ways you can score a crit, which is like doing 6 damage to them, which I think that's all they had, so they die anyway. But there are other ways to inflict an injury, like Josh has a way to inflict an injury just by spending a luck point. If you inflict an injury, they die immediately. Doesn't matter how much damage they've taken. So they're very, very squishy.
Gotcha.
So we didn't really need hit locations.
Right, yeah.
And they do have a separate hit table because they're insects. So
that would make
sense.
That's
the only part of the tabletop game that I'm curious about, though, because we never actually did it. And from what I've read, I don't know if it's just a random, like if you hit, you're supposed to just roll a d20 and see where you actually hit it, or if you can specifically, I'm going to aim for the head and it becomes more difficult and stuff like that.
There's both. In the main game, if you when you roll, if you're not aiming for a particular location, there's a special d20 that has hit locations on it. Or if you don't have that special d20, you roll a d20 and you look it up on a chart. If you are aiming for a spot, I think it increases the difficulty by 1 to hit them, maybe more, depending upon the spot. But then you hit that particular spot on them. And then there are, of course, perks that make it easier to aim and hit a particular spot.
Yeah. Perks for everything.
Yeah,
yes.
One additional thing is like we decided, hey, let's play Fallout, because we've almost all of us have played it. Almost all of us have or watched the TV show. But we also decided, hey, let's play Fallout. And so I reached out to Modiphius, and they sent us the core rule PDF. Obviously I spent money on the perk cards and stuff too. And I got some of the other stuff. I wanted to make that clear, is we were going to play Fallout, but also we got free stuff. So,
so I think some like quick lessons learned. We struggled a little bit about how the Fallout action dice work in terms of character creation and like what I'm rolling for, like, because it'll say like roll 2 Fallout dice, but that's not rolling 2d6, or they're actually action dice, right? Is what they're technically called.
Action.
So if you have the dice and they have different faces on them, it's a little easier to read. But there's also a table that you can just roll regular six-sided dice and get the results. And so I think Josh and I both did like, oh, look, I have all the bullets because like I just rolled the
bullets,
dice, not realizing.
Yeah, it's like roll, for when at character creation, it's like, oh, you get 3 or 4 of these action dice in 10 plus 4 action dice in bullets. Well, if you think it's a D6, that's up to 24 extra bullets.
Right.
And it's not entirely clear like how you the way I'm interpreting it is for every hit that you do on an action die is a bullet, is the number. So on an action die, there's 1 hit, there's 2 hits, there's 2 blank faces, and then there's 2 like Fallout Boy faces. And those Fallout Boy faces count as 1 hit plus an effect. So for like ammo, I'm just counting the 1 hit, not the effect in terms of things. So at most you can get 2 bullets per die.
Yeah.
So you can get up to 8 extra bullets, not 24 extra bullets.
And I rolled so many 4s on my extra bullets too.
On the chart, 3 and 4 are the blank faces. So it's
we also had a bit of a hiccup around ranks. They're capped at 3 for a first level character. Like that's how high you can go.
I missed that.
Some of us missed that. So I was like, we're playing the game, and I'm like, this is why we do a session 0, because I don't understand how everybody else is getting such a high target number.
Right.
So the other thing was just for my particular build, my backstory is like I'm at a weapons testing vault, and I was sent out onto the surface to test out my laser pistol, which then was promptly stolen because I came up with that backstory because I couldn't figure out how I could actually buy a laser pistol.
Right.
So somebody else had a laser pistol, so I don't know if that was part of their starting build or whatever, but it actually works.
Yep.
Now I took a tag, so there's skills that give you bonuses if you tagged them. And they're just basically the better version of that skill, right? And so I have energy weapons. I spent the tag on it. I'm hoping the GM will give me a laser pistol or an opportunity to find a laser pistol earlier in the game. Otherwise, it's just a fun bit of my backstory. But in any case, like, you can't necessarily buy the things you need right out of the gate. Like you need to level up a little bit. And then I guess what was the other thing I was thinking about? I think overall mechanically it worked fine, but I think it's a good example of why you run a session 0. Like,
yes,
you figure these things out.
Yeah, it was one of those things of like shake the rule set out and learn it as a group, and point things out. Like one of our other players, our guest player is John. Since it's a skill-based game, like you said, Ken, we've got, you've got the ability to put like 1 point in a bunch of different things, or, or super specialize. And he comes from a Call of Cthulhu background. So he's very used to doing, let's not over specialize, but also let's not under specialize either. Let's not become too much of a generalist. And he ended up initially creating for the session 0, he created a character that he thought was going to be, obviously you create a character that you think is going to be fun to play, but he also thought he'd be, more or less unique in it, and took some doctor stuff and took some tech stuff and some other stuff like that. And it turned out like everybody else, that's where they had specialized.
Right.
And so he has since gone through and gone back and created a new character, which is a super mutant, but it is like a silverback gorilla sort of thing that had gotten the forced evolutionary virus, the FEV, and has become a super mutant in that way. So it was actually an evolution to like get intelligence and things like that. And so
nice.
I think I'm going to figure out how to introduce that character quickly. Or we're just going to say that's the way it always was, because that was our initial session 0. And that we're not going to necessarily release that. Like if we ever have a Patreon, we'll release it there. But I think we'll keep our session 0 offline. And then our initial session, we'll just, I guess, probably have him there because I hate having people sit out and wait for an introduction, and then the introduction doesn't happen until like 2 hours in or something like that. That's never fun.
We did just leave the building. He could be right outside.
Right.
Yeah, we did just leave. But
I also like the idea of just mind wipe. Nope, this is how he's always been.
Inserted memories.
Yeah.
Now that you're in the light, you can see him.
In the light, he's actually 3-4 feet taller, green skinned. It was only because he was hunched over. No. Yeah, I think it's one of those retcon things that we're just going to do. But we are kind of out of time for this one. We come back and talk more about it in the future. We are planning on doing kind of like a 4 or 6 session set of games that don't know when those will come out because we still have to figure out schedules to actually record them. We may actually try and do like a marathon weekend of like a Saturday, Sunday sort of thing and have a few games over the weekend just so that we can get through them all, which means I have to do more prep ahead of time. So we do have one question from our audience of minions and henchmen and overlords in training. I think this one's from an overlord in training that says, in building my dark empire in the Commonwealth, what are the most critical aspects to consider for it to be both formidable and sustainable?
Location.
Very good question, because actually I am an aspiring newbie overlord in my current Fallout 4 game. And the last time I played Fallout 4, I played in survival mode, which makes it much tougher.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one, but it's fun because you can't. Decisions become important because you get thirsty, you have to sleep in order to save your game. And so resources and how you build things out become much more important because the buildy parts of Fallout 4, like you can build whole settlements, but there's no real reason to do that if you're just like playing normal mode because you're just a superhero, right? Like whatever. You don't need to farm bullets, but in survival mode, you kind of do. So I've been thinking about this because I want to have my character be like the barbarian warlord queen of the wastelands, right? And so you do need to think about access to resources, so location, right? So is there water nearby so you can get regular water? Can you plant crops, right? Like, because in the post-apocalyptic wasteland, it's not just about who has guns and bullets, but who has the food and the water. So from a practical standpoint, I think you gotta work on an army travels on its stomach, right? So does a Fallout settlement.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on something there, and there's two ways to kind of go about this. The nice and the peaceful, let's build the settlement, things like that, farm, etc. Or, I mean, we are talking about overlords here. Go to Nuka World, take over Nuka World, get all those raiders to take over those settlements, and then have the settlers work for you. I think is the way. Really, you got to
That's
do
the plan.
I mean, that's my solution. I think that's a good way. Plus, you have all those fun things at Nuka World to have fun on while people are doing work for you.
I think it also depends on what kind of overlord are you going to be. The benevolent overlord or the evil overlord?
Well, I mean, we are here in the sub-basements of the former secret lair of overlords Miller and Johnson.
Correct.
So, I mean, whether or not they were evil, that's debatable and for history to really decide. So, anyway, that's it. As the mutant hounds are right outside my door, I've got to get going. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us on the lair, not the Lair of Secrets. Yeah, the secret
campaigns and coffee.
Yeah.
Mind wipe device has worked again.
Yes. Yeah. I hit the button that wipes my mind. I keep forgetting that that's the button that wipes my mind.
No red flashy thing.
Yeah. So our edition of campaigns and coffee or the Lair of Secrets. And we will see you again sometime soon. Head on over to YouTube or your favorite podcatcher and subscribe. Definitely hit like, etc. Head over to layerofsecrets.com and you can get links for all of that stuff. In addition to extra articles, we actually write things down, in text form, in addition to doing this audio and video thing. So thanks again, and we'll see you again soon.